Hi, and welcome to another episode of BYU MBA Horizons. Let's start things off with a question. Is it possible to pursue a successful career but have a blast at the same time? A lot of people would say no, that you've got to be stone-faced and serious about everything. But our next guest would beg to differ. It's Brad Taylor, a Vice President of Human Resources, on this episode of BYU MBA Horizons. Welcome to the program.
Yes, thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the time to share some of your experiences with us today.
I am honored to do it.
Well, I wanted to start things off today by getting first a quick snapshot of what you do, what company you're currently employed with.
You bet. I am the Vice President of Human Resources at General Mills and currently in General Mills Canada, which is the second largest business segment in the General Mills company.
Okay.
So it's a great job. It's an executive job that oversees all aspects of HR for a $2.5 billion business.
Okay, wonderful. Wow, so a lot of scale with that responsibility.
A lot of scale and a lot of breadth and a lot of depth.
Okay, great. Well, if we move back in time a little bit to your time in the MBA program, what were some of the things that you were doing before coming back to the program, and what prompted you to make that change and go back to school to get your MBA?
You know, mine is very non-traditional by today's standards. I did an internship only, a summer internship between my bachelor's degree and coming into the program. I was an accelerated student. I came
Obviously.
Almost right in.
Yes.
And the internship was with Zenger Miller, which is a forerunner to Zenger Folkman, which is a great HR consulting company here in Provo. But I was applying to MBA programs in other places, thinking about mixing up the schools. I had done a bachelor's degree here, and so I thought, well, should I try I'm from Palo Alto, so should I try a master's degree in Stanford or at Berkeley? But I got engaged at that time, and my wife needed another year at BYU, so the decision became help her to be able to finish her bachelor's and stay here. Okay. And I'm so glad that I did, because it ended up that the BYU MBA program was one of the greatest experiences of my life. Wonderful.
Now, did you have HR experience before coming back to the program? And if not, how did you decide to focus on HR within the MBA program?
Great question. I did not have HR experience before the MBA, but what I had, and these were the big influencing factors, is two real role models, people that I really admired and looked up to, that were probably closer to my dad's age. That as I got older and sort of got to understand what people do, I figured out that they were HR leaders. And I loved what I understood about what they did, and I also just loved them as individual people. And probably a convergence of the two of those things got me thinking about it. And then the coursework, I did at least one or two HR, OB type classes in my undergrad to test it out a little bit more, and I loved those more than the other classes I was taking, so that was second positive sign. And then as I got into the MBA program and compared my marketing and supply chain and finance and strategy courses to those that I was taking that were focused on HR, it was kind of confirmation number 3 that this is my field.
Right. Now, currently BYU has a very strong recruiting program set up. A lot of world-class companies come on campus recruiting our students. What was the atmosphere when you were in the program?
It was truly so different. There were so few of the big companies, blue chip companies or otherwise, that came. It was a lot more, we had to be a lot more entrepreneurial in terms of job seeking in 1986. One of the big companies that came was General Mills. And so one of the few sort of blue chip HR recruiting companies that I talked to on campus was General Mills. And everybody who was interested in HR, and even some who weren't interested in HR, signed up for those interviews with General Mills.
High brand recognition, all of that.
Great company, exactly. And they gave a absolutely fabulous presentation on campus that had us all thinking, man, what a great organization, what a great blend of winning and competitiveness and great brands and great people and great fun. So it left a big impression on all of us.
Was the recruiting process fairly smooth for you, or did you experience a few ups and downs along the way?
Oh, it was all ups and downs. I mean, the first thing was there was no Sherpa program.
And for the benefit of our viewers, what is the Sherpa program?
So there's this beautiful Sherpa program that pairs a second-year MBA with a first-year MBA, and they get a ton of coaching and just advice on here's what you need to do, here's what you need to be thinking about. And in addition to that, there's great faculty coaching, and there's kind of onboarding, I sense, training sessions that help students to figure out their resume and their career strategy and the kinds of industries that they might be interested in, and river trips that help people to understand the kinds of companies that are pouring into campus. There was none of that. In my day, it was just get to work. It was really focused on the education. Get to work on your schooling. They dumped it on you heavy, and you worked really hard and kind of felt like you didn't have time to even think about career. So you did have to be more entrepreneurial. And for me, it was later in the game. In that entire first semester, not only did we not interview, we weren't even thinking about internships. It was just focus on surviving the semester. And then late in the second semester, as we're getting closer to spring, we all kind of started to talk and think about what will we do for a summer internship this year. So different world.
A number of changes have occurred since then.
Yeah.
Now,
for the good.
With General Mills, what was the interview process like for you personally?
There were probably, as I mentioned earlier, so many students signed up to talk to General Mills. I think it was probably between 20 and 25 students that signed up to talk to them. So it felt like the odds were slim. And then on top of that, I was not one of those who was pre-selected to interview with General Mills. They were good enough to leave a few, and it was Jim Gallivan's practice to leave a couple or a few open slots at the end for someone who really, really wanted it. And in those days, part of the way that you demonstrated that you really wanted it was by bidding. You had a certain number of points so you could bid on a certain company for a certain interview. So in Vegas language, I put a lot of my chips on General Mills. I really wanted one of those open slots. So at the end of a long day, I was one of the last people to talk with General Mills. And miraculously, out of that, was selected to go back and have the flyback interview and then ultimately the job offer. So it was amazing. And in fact, because of that, I have made it a practice of my own to always make sure that I leave at least a couple of open slots in that same tradition of thinking that you never know. Kind of the lesson that I learned when I was going through it for myself is you never know if you might be that person. You know, never lose confidence, never assume because you weren't the first one selected that you're not going to be the one who is selected in the end. So I've left those slots and have had the same experience myself on the other side of the table as an interviewer in finding someone that wasn't on my radar and maybe wasn't pre-selected by me, but ended up being a person who was successful in getting an internship or a job.
Right. Now, in your career, you've had quite a few opportunities, as I look over what you've accomplished, to have global oriented projects. Could you share some of maybe the countries that you've had projects in and some of the things that you've worked on there?
Absolutely. And I have been so fortunate to have so many cool international experiences. Part of that is a precursor to that, I suppose, is General Mills, when I started with the company, was a very North America-centric company. We had very little outside of US and Canada. We had two beautiful big businesses in North America, but that was kind of it. In the year 2001, we acquired Pillsbury. And one of the three main strategic reasons that we acquired Pillsbury was because they had, even though they were a smaller company than us, they had a significant foothold in around 100 different countries and markets around the world. And so we had a vision that we could use their distribution channels and sales forces, et cetera, to start pumping General Mills products through there as well. So when that happened, it kind of opened up the world to us. And then what happened is General Mills was the superior organization in terms of HR stuff, talent, organization structure, and org design and culture. And so they immediately started looking for General Mills HR help, just help to develop those organizations the way that a BYU student who's trained here would want to develop them. And so I got called in for a variety, so usually either talent development or culture development reasons to work in Rio de Janeiro for our Brazil business, and in Mumbai for our India business, in Dubai for our United Arab Emirates business, in Switzerland for our Serial Partners Worldwide business, which is a serial business spanning the rest of the world, but headquartered in Switzerland. And then a big one that had less to do with the Pillsbury acquisition was a experience in South Korea that was kind of a labor relations debacle where General Mills Korea had some corruption in their senior management. And just goes to show that even in the greatest of companies, it can happen. And so before I was on the scene, they ended up needing to let go the president of that organization, a sizable business for General Mills. And that devolved into some labor disruption where employees were missing that style of leadership that he had brought and getting a little bit disgruntled with the lack of quick resolution to issues to do with what they were working on, which led ultimately to a strike, to that organization actually first voting in a union, second going out on strike, and third, the strike turning into a kind of violent and turbulent strike, to the point where there were some fights in the street and kind of over-the-top picketing, and at its very worst, even executives being hammer and nail boarded into their offices. So this thing turned crazy. This is all before I came on the scene, but it got the attention of our CEO, who said, we have got to have a bigger intervention in South Korea. And they said, who has significant HR experience and also speaks some Korean language? And of course, that search yielded one person. Because I'd served my mission in Korea, that was me.
You had the profile.
I had the profile. So I went over there and had one of the coolest HR experiences of my life because first I got the opportunity to get a resolution to that strike. And without belaboring the story, I think the fact that I had had great labor relations experiences early in my career at General Mills, combined with understanding the kind of decisions that I could make. And I think a lot of the people halfway around the world in General Mills Korea weren't sure about what kind of decision-making authority they had. I was able to use all of that along with my language skills to help them get that quickly resolved. And then the next fun topic turned to developing a new leadership team. At this point, there was like 5 of their senior leaders that were not there anymore for similar reasons. And so doing a lot of leadership development and really gelling that into the kind of General Mills leadership team that we've come to expect, really great people who lead and guide the organization in a very motivating way. And then the last piece was to have a bit of a whole team healing. Because of the strike, there were bitter feelings, and so we took an entire week as a 225-person General Mills Korea offsite and did nothing but team building and creating understanding so that these guys could come back together as a strong team and be the incredible profit generator that they had been for General Mills for decades prior.
So coming into an experience like that for someone who's fairly new out of the program, and this obviously didn't apply in your case, you were further into your career at this point. Riots, fights, that sounds somewhat terrifying.
Yeah.
What types of resources did you lean on or experience to kind of get you through that phase?
It's a great question, and I guess there definitely were some. I mean, General Mills and a lot of these corporations come to BYU provide great resources. Now, at the same time, in that case, they were relying on me as an experienced person to handle a lot on my own from halfway around the world. But nonetheless, we had a centralized in Minneapolis labor relations expert that I could draw upon their advice. We had legal labor people. I could draw on their legal advice as well. And other HR professionals working in the international arena. So certainly there was some good resources for me to draw upon as needed.
Okay, great. As you think through the experiences you've had in your career, every career is shaped by, to a certain extent, the people who are around you.
Yeah.
So are there any mentors or people that were especially helpful to you in your career?
I mean, so many, I can't even name them all. And I know you're asking about General Mills, and I'll get to that, but I'd say that the first mentors for myself were right here at BYU. When I was coming into the MBA program, I had never taken any business classes. I was not someone who was coming from a business major. I was coming from a psychology major. And so these amazing fellow students that mentored me just on how to survive the finance class or how to survive the marketing class, et cetera, were amazing. The patience and the care that they took, I think of them as some of the very first mentors. Even though we didn't have a Sherpa program, there was some of that same spirit that's been there forever. And then at General Mills, the same guy, Jim Gallivan, that had recruited me off campus here at BYU, was a strong early mentor. He took me under his wing. I was his BYU hire, and he checked in with me formally, like sit down and spend as much time as we need every week. And I'd review my projects with him. I could ask him kind of the dumb questions that I maybe didn't feel comfortable asking someone else. I got sage wisdom and advice from him. So he was a phenomenal first mentor. I talked about him in an interview with the BYU Marriott magazine because he was such an influential mentor for me. And then along the way, at every stage, General Mills is a big believer in individual development and coaching on our individual development. So every step of the way, no matter where I was, I had amazing HR leaders that were really looking out for me and creating plans for me, developmental plans and actions that were very tailored, no pun intended, to me, and the things that I needed to do and things that would help me to lead and get to where I wanted to get to. And so that is part of the blessing I've had by being in that organization.
What roles do humor and optimism play in building a successful career?
You know what? I think they're huge. One of the first things that attracted me to General Mills was the humor and the sense of fun. While they were focused on their business and they were competitive about their business, there was a sense of not taking yourself too seriously and of having fun along the way. And I so gravitated toward that and tried to carry that on throughout my career. I think when you're working for a company where the equity characters, as we call them, are the Lucky Charms leprechaun and the Trix rabbit and the Pillsbury doughboy, it's easy to not take yourself too seriously. But I would just say that we made it part of our business to make sure that we had fun. Even if we were doing something that was intense or that was challenging or that was a big comprehensive project, we always made sure to find a way to weave fun into it. I'll give you one example. We were on a very challenging project in the days where I worked for the research and development part of General Mills. It was taxing, it was long hours, it required a lot of hard thinking and headaches, but we set up a baseball diamond. We found out that those of us working on the team loved baseball, and we set up a wiffle ball stadium inside this research cafeteria. And it even had upper balconies that served as our upper decks to hit home runs into. And every evening around 6 o'clock, no matter what else was going on, we would stop for a minute and play a pretty intense little fun game of wiffle ball right there in the cafeteria. We were worried we might set off the sprinklers if we hit the ball too high up toward the ceiling.
Would you recommend that current students try to build similar experiences into their time here in the program?
Absolutely. A piece of advice is work hard and do your best to do great work, but never take yourself too seriously and never get too upset about the mistakes. Remember that mistakes are a part of the learning process and that you literally do grow from those. And have fun along the way. Have a sense of humor. Be willing to laugh at yourself. It makes your day more fun, and in the end, it makes you more productive as well. When you get too obsessed over the challenges in life, you do lose your focus and your productivity.
That's great advice. What does being a BYU MBA mean to you?
Being a BYU MBA means everything. It is. It was one of the most foundational experiences of my life. It is literally where my business education came from. I came from more of a liberal arts background. I did not have business courses in my background until that moment. And I so desperately needed the whole business spectrum. I needed the supply chain education and the marketing and the finance and the accounting and the strategy. And so those things, I have continued to draw upon those to this day. The other aspect, I probably could go on all day, but the relationships. I mean, the people that were my kind of fellow student mentors that helped me to survive through those 2 years in the MBA program were not only great mentors and great teachers to me, but have been lifelong friends and lifelong valuable parts of my network, giving me the advice and the wisdom I've needed at different crossroads in my career. So between all of that and then the spiritual aspects of BYU, which helped me to grow as a whole person in my educational and spiritual development, have been phenomenal. So I can't say enough. It is one of the landmark experiences of my entire life.
What would you say to students or prospective students who, similar to you, come from non-traditional backgrounds?
I would say that you couldn't have a better place than BYU. The opportunity to get an amazing, well-rounded business education from some of the greatest faculty in the world. And I don't say that lightly, because I have recruited and spoken in symposiums and even consulted with some of the great HR campuses in the world. I've been actively involved in Cornell and in the University of Minnesota and Michigan and Illinois and Purdue. And I can say that the faculty at BYU are first-rate, top-notch, phenomenal, and that the resources, the investment, the commitment, and of course the ROI of a BYU MBA are all extraordinary.
Any final advice for current students?
Yes, I would say advice number one is, this is a made-up phrase, but pay it backward. Meaning, I think the idea of paying it forward is when you do a good deed and somewhere down the line you think that that'll come back around to you. But the thought at BYU is you're here, you're in one of the greatest institutions in the world, and there are going to be people that do great things to help you to move forward and succeed and grow. And as you become successful and move out into your career, it is so critical that you think back and give back to BYU. Maybe that means financially, but it definitely means in terms of recruiting, mentoring, networking, helping these students to be placed in the greatest jobs that they can have. I've been doing that my entire career, and it's also been one of the most fun and rewarding things that I could ever do.
Brad Taylor, it has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you.
Wanted to thank you for coming on the program and wish you the best of luck.
It has been a pleasure for me. Thanks for talking to me.
Thank you.